This video is for Practice It, which is showing building Java programs, exercise 8.19 constructor rectangle. And this problem is to add another constructor to the rectangle class. And the rectangle class was specified in problem 8.18. Let me switch back there, where you had to create this constructor that takes an XY width height. So what they're asking to do, instead of an XY width height, you've got a point width height. So they've changed the original XY. And now if you watched my video for 8.18, you know that that was actually one of the possible implementations I suggested, is that you didn't actually have to store an X and a Y. You could have stored a point P. Okay, so this is very similar to what I was talking about. But assuming that you went ahead and did store an X and a Y, then you're going to have to figure out how do you get the X and the Y out of this point, which should be fairly straightforward. There are a couple of different ways that you can actually create the constructor. So, of course, you can manually set those 4 fields just like you did in 8.18. And in case you need some review on how do you create a constructor, how do you do that, go back to my video on exercise 8.14, which really has a lot more detail in general how to do class creation. And I also have a separate video that is all about generic class creation and how you can create any class just by knowing what the member variables in the class name are. So you should definitely watch that. But as far as actually setting them here, you have a couple of choices. You can do it manually. I can think of 3 different choices. You can do it manually, set each of the member variables fields, and remember the member variable fields are accessed by this dot something. Okay, so you can manually set those fields. Number 2, you can use setters, which is my personal preference. These problems actually didn't ask you to create a setter, but I always prefer to do that. Create a set whatever, and then in your constructor you can now call the setters. And that's actually required in 8.7, the time span problem. You pretty much have to call the constructor. Or another thing you could do is you could call, so we've already got a constructor that takes an XY width height. You can actually call that constructor. Okay, you can actually call it. Can't remember for sure whether the book tells you how to do this, but you can actually call the constructor. How do you call the constructor? Now, the constructor, as you know, the name is the name of the class, and so you might think the constructor would just be calling rectangle. Would that be how you call another constructor? No, that's not how you call the constructor, because that's the name. When the compiler looks at that, it says, oh, that's a class name. Why are you putting a class name there? What I'm expecting after a class name is a variable name, right? Rectangle R. That's what it's expecting. So you can't do that. Instead, you need to use this. Okay? When the compiler sees this, it knows we're talking about the object, member variables. And if you actually start putting parentheses after this, then it says, oh, what he must be doing is calling the constructor for this object. So you can put in your constructor parameters here, okay, and actually call another constructor. So that's a third way that you can do this problem. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas. Again, take a look at 8.14. It's probably your best bet. 8.18. I've also got a great video on class construction. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. That helps other students find this channel and other problems. Thank you very much.